Welcome to the SBCA podcast, Component Connection, where we explore the people, ideas, trends, and innovations shaping the structural framing industry. Regardless of how you touch this industry, we're glad you're here. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, I'm Molly Butz, Interim Co-Executive Director for SBCA, and I'll be your host for this episode of Component Connection, Lumber Insights. I'm joined today by Justin Binning and Ken Timmins. Justin and Ken are lumber traders from American International Forest Products, or AIFP. Welcome to the podcast, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us, Molly.
Thanks, Molly.
Good to see you guys. It's been a little bit. I feel like that's always what my notes say. It's been a hot minute, but it has been a hot minute. So let's do a little catch up and see where the lumber market's been for the last month or so.
Well, it's kind of nice with the way things had been for so long last year. Felt like if we did it every 2 weeks, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about. And now we've got more to talk about, which is good every 30 days. Certainly had some change. In the month of February, the market was certainly soft. Prices were retracting on pretty much all items, but it was very orderly, like an orderly drawback. And discount were, in the $5 to $15 range kind of every day. Some things maybe you couldn't discount if it was not available, but it just felt very orderly, I guess. The demand didn't really feel like it shifted a whole heck of a lot. It's just that supply just slightly outpaced the demand. So really this retraction that we had in the last quarter of 25 with production, with the mills trying to get more in line with demand, has worked. And I think it's certainly paid off. I think we're in the year of the higher lows and higher highs. And I think I mentioned that probably the last podcast, but the only time we really saw any major discounts being done was really if there's a volume, there's a big pile, and the mill was kind of listening. And if it made sense to them, they'd move it, and it was quietly moved and done and not talked about. But that trade was very few and far between, where in the past, you'd see a lot more of that style of trading being done. So as the calendar flipped to March, so did kind of the lumber market in yellow pine. The prompt wood that mills had, they were able to clean it up, started getting price at print. And then as this next week's unfolded, we've really seen an uptick in pricing and what the mills have been able to, move their price forward. So again, hearkening back to that production that we took out, the style of buying hasn't changed. And so it's just this constant feeding. But now as we're moving into spring, folks are wanting to bring a little bit more wood in, start building a little bigger inventory, which obviously makes sense. So a lot of shorts obviously getting covered. I think there was a lot of business that was taken in the earlier months for multifamily stuff that was starting in March. So I think a lot of that wood is getting covered. We obviously touched on just the time of the year, the weather getting a little bit better. The treaters are coming in, purchasing some wood. So right now, the market feels really strong. I expect the month of March to be much like it's presented already in the first 10 days, which is going to be solid with prices pushing up on most items. The standouts for sure, 16s in number 2, number 1 grades, both in 4-inch and 6-inch. 2x8, definitely a hot item. Just really, there's not a whole lot of 2x8 being produced anymore in comparison to 4-inch and 6-inch. And when we do feel this push and this need for demand, it feels amplified and the prices rise very quickly because there isn't any available. And so then it gets very tough to cover, obviously. On the other side of that, when we talk about MSR is still pretty relatively available. I think the higher prices that we're going to be seeing in the 4-inch are going to raise those MSR prices. But it was funny talking with some mills last month. It was just this feast or famine with MSR. It's like, they have it, they can't give it away. Doesn't matter what the price is, just can't get rid of it. And then, we feel this shift in it, and then all of a sudden nobody can find it. So we're not there yet. So great opportunity for those out there wanting MSR. This is a great time to get it while you can, because it is available. And I don't feel that it's seen the price appreciation that we've seen so far in some of the number 1 and number 2 products. So yeah. And then I know we'll touch on trucking. We will kind of wrap up with that, but definitely some things to take note of in the transportation world.
All right, I got a few ideas just to kick things off. First of all, really excited. This is just an audio podcast because I'm more sunburned than a redhead in the tropics right now. You'd shut the video off if you could see us, so that's a nice touch. Also, thinking about this podcast and how we kind of navigate the conversation with component manufacturers, designers, lumber buyers, even folks that don't necessarily transact the lumber, but you're in the sphere. Justin and I do a really great job giving the color commentary and the emotion and the insight to the heartbeat from within a very large shading floor in North America. If anyone who listens to this podcast ever wants to see graphs on the price of the products we're talking about or data or anything like that, we're also happy to help provide that to the best of our ability if that's something that helps you, or things more specific to your town within a smaller market, right? We speak in pretty big generalities pretty often, so we can always complement the color commentary on here with more specifics to anyone's business if you ever want.
Or yeah, if you want this 30-minute breakdown.
Yeah, if you want the YouTube comment to be a full TED Talk, we'd be happy to drink a black coffee and just scream about lumber with you, because that is what we do. Justin made a lot of really great points there. It's been a very fun trading market, to tell you the truth. We're going on 4 straight months of super healthy action, starting at the tail end, Q4 of 2025, and today is March 10th. We're still rocking. From my desk in Western Products, Doug for him for white for ESLP, green trades. The month of March looks rock solid. We've had super good weather over the last 30 days. I was debating the last time that we recorded this podcast if we were going to steal away some of the spring building season's demand, which would, similar to 2023 when we had a very mild winter, how we kind of front loaded the building season in January, February, and then it kind of puttered out in Q2. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. Demand is actually just a lot better than we ever gave it credit for, frankly. Housing starts numbers are up. Interest rates really are not bad.
As good as they've been.
Yeah.
Quite some time.
And, I'm 31 years old, in the wheelhouse of having a lot of peers looking at trying to buy a home. Obviously, affordability is tough for people in my age range, but it's not a lost dream. There are plenty of folks who are able to work really hard, make some sacrifices, save some money, and do it. And it sounds like the government maybe has some ideas to stimulate first-time home buyers getting out of the rental market and getting into the home buying community. So lots of tailwinds on that forefront in terms of demand. And demand really has been great. And unless you're trading a lot from Chicago to New York City, where there has been some winter weather, which is typical of every year, there's not a market in the Western U.S. that hasn't been building actively. Even as you get into the mountain states, Montana, Colorado, Wyoming, obviously snow on the ground, but better than typical building weather for a lot of those places. Pricing has been very consistent over the last 3 months. It's not like we've seen any ridiculous run-ups in any product. $5 to $10 a week every week for almost everything. A little bit of pullback here and there when things get a little too elevated. A lot of people are anticipating there could be a buying opportunity sometime late Q2. Time will tell. It really is too early to hedge a heavy bet on that. I think the smart move is to continue to buy your inventory. Whether we get something in April and May, if we do, I think it's very short-lived, very small, and it could be gobbled up by the big players in the lumber buying community very quickly. It is advantageous for your business to stick with it now. And I think back to our last 2 recordings in January and February, we really talked a lot about staying ahead of the market and just grabbing deals while you could. And if you listen to that advice, your business is in a really good footing to make profit on your material turns. And I'm going to say the same point one more time here today. March is rock solid, and hoping that something happens for you in late April or May can be really dangerous territory right now, because pricing is still super affordable. There is a lot of demand out there. And the one thing that is kind of a terrifying thought as a born and raised Oregonian, this is the driest winter we've had in probably 25 years. There will be forest fires this year. And it's something I hate bringing it up. We talk about it on this podcast every year, because I think we've been doing this podcast about 6 or 7 years now, which
At least.
is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But we talk about it every year. And of all the years we've been doing this podcast, this will be the worst forest fire year. That's heartbreaking to say, but we're at like 30% of usual snowfall for the year. I mean, we're at the point where it's not even, oh, our mountains aren't getting snow. Kind of worried about the rivers in the summertime. I mean, lots of other things are going to be impacted heavily from this. So it's just something to think about, right? When we're thinking about how we want to buy our lumber and leverage the market to put some more profits in our businesses, could we potentially maybe get a little price break here in a couple months? Yes. Could we also have a natural disaster that creates a price increase? Unfortunately, yes. And you got to weigh the risk reward. It doesn't really make sense to put that gamble down. You should grab wood while it's available.
Well, I think in your case too, right? Like the U.S. South has the ability to add more production, right? Like they can fire it up and pump out some more. Like we've seen that. We've seen what that looks like and what they can do. And we can see where there's a better balance. I think in your case, when you talk about West Coast mills and the inland, like what you see is what you get. And I know there's been some frustration from your customer base throughout this past year on just like, oh my gosh, like, why can't I find this? Or this isn't available, or the price is so, whatever. But I think to Ken's point, it's like, if you can get what you need or get what you historically know that you use, grab it, like get it. So that you're not dealing with some guy like me or Ken trying to shove 2,400 yellow pine down your throat in some market. And you're like, we don't use that. But then you can't find what you do use, So, yeah, I mean, I just think that's a really smart point, right? Like, if you can get it.
Yeah, if you're a ribeye steak guy and you're at the grocery store and they're out of ribeye steaks, grab the fillets. Is it what you want? No. But is it better than having chicken breasts?
Take it easy.
You know what I mean?
No, that's where I might disagree with you, Kevin. If they don't have what I want as a ribeye, I'm just not buying any steak. So I don't know.
Maybe my first bad food reference in something. But yeah, it's interesting. I just think, dribbling with your head up as you go down the field, like see what's on the other side of the field here and like make sure just grab a little extra wood. It's very easy to make that blanket statement across products out of the Western United States. It will be better for you to grab it now. And it really doesn't matter if it's web, cord, some stuff. It doesn't matter. Just grab a little extra. You'll be okay.
Is there anything that's missing? I mean, I know you guys mentioned 2x8. I jotted that down. And also like 2x8 getting a little hard to find, a good opportunity for MSR. Is there anything else? Are there any other holes in the fiber basket right now?
Plug fur web stock is tighter than the lid on a pickle jar. Price has gone up in the last 30 days. And it's still selling to the pickiest people all over the place. People who don't substitute products or substituting grades. People who are the quote unquote cheap guy are paying big premiums. And we're all scratching for it every day. It's a constant topic every day.
Right.
That has gone up very far. I anticipate cord stock products also are going to go up pretty significantly. That market has been relatively flat in terms of last 3-4 months, and with less and less MSR coming out of Canada, it's just going to keep putting more and more strain on what the domestic mills can do. And while we're talking about international trade, it's also worth mentioning here, we have a war going on in the Middle East, which does pose problems, typically not great for markets, whether it's a commodity market, a financial market. People get a little clammy, less confidence in the future well-being of your assets in whatever capability that is. One important note to that, we import quite a bit of European lumber here at this company, and we are going to get an influx of European lumber that was going to the Middle East that won't be shipping there. So if you're on the Eastern Seaboard or the Gulf, there will be more European lumber coming in through the ports. Now, that typically does not mean MSR for a lot of truss manufacturers due to the codes in this country, but in general, number two, some web stock items, things like that will be showing up. That's probably 45 days out from now.
Okay. All right. Well, we did say we wanted to talk a little bit about transportation also. I just read in the last day or so that trucks and rail cars maybe there's more energy going into that than there is into, anything else. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, it's, we're back to 2 weeks or sooner is prompt. It kind of feels like that in a lot of locations, a lot of backlogs in some of the reload end terminals. It's just not easy right now. Rates up 25 to 50% on a lot of established lanes throughout the U.S. South, going east, west, north out of the South, which obviously just equates to higher lumber costs. A lot of contractual business has been reducing the number of available trucks in the spot market. So just capacity seems very limited right now. Ken obviously touched on the conflict in Iran right now. If you've been paying attention to oil prices, refresh it, every 6 hours, it might be up $30. It might be down $30. I think the last I looked, we were right around $83 trading per barrel. It was up to almost as high as $120 2 days ago. So a lot of fluctuation in there. At the pump, though, what does that equate to from a fuel cost? On average, I think across the nation right now, it's roughly 50 cents. Some places higher, maybe a little bit less, but bottom line is the cost of fuel is up, capacity is tight, which equals paying higher rates for those trucks that are available, which again equates to the delivered price of your lumber being higher. So do we see that getting any better anytime soon? We really don't. Rail, on the other hand, I haven't personally heard a lot of bottlenecks or any issues there. Again, the majority, I would say 85% of the trade that I conduct on a daily basis is all done on flatbed trucks. But, so I haven't heard any, grumblings from the sawmills that I do ship rail cars out of. Things seem to be, they've got capacity and they like to load cars and they get it done very quickly. So Ken can touch on, obviously, the West Coast feel and inland.
Same out of the West. It's funny. We actually got to the point where trucking had been cheaper than rail in a lot of spots, which is an anomaly. Typically does not happen. And then as soon as that got discovered, things happened. Oil's crazy. It was fun for about 13 minutes and now we're back. So, but Justin's absolutely right. From an availability standpoint, no bottlenecks out of the West. That's very healthy in terms of mode of transportation right now.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's look ahead a little bit. We'll get back together in a few weeks. What advice do you have for our component manufacturers as they're looking forward?
Well, I already did Ken's. Again, I think with yellow pine, the month of March, look for higher prices, higher lows, higher highs. I'm going to keep saying that because I think that's just where we're at. I think there's been a shift in thought from a production level and how they're approaching markets. And then basically the end all be all, which is we need to get the price up, right? From a profit standpoint at the sawmill level. And what they've realized just based on where demand is right now, what that number looks like from a production standpoint. And I think they've got a better algorithm working right now and feel of that. So if you're thinking that we're, at some point, going to fall back down to the lows with some of the lows we saw in 2025, I hate to disappoint you. It's not going to happen. And so the one thing I will say, after we had kind of that 8-week run up, we had roughly about a 5-week retraction coming out to the end of January and in through February. So we had this, I guess what I'm thinking is we're going to have some shorter consolidation phases, right? And so my thought process is I think we see this market obviously push higher through March. I think it's probably the first part of April that we get a chance to maybe have some reprieve. And so what I would say now, if you think you're going to get a better deal waiting a couple weeks to get that wood that you're going to need, you got to buy it today. It's just going to cost you more. So to cover your needs over the next 30 days, I say hop in now, look for another opportunity 1st of April to hopefully start to average back in at a lower cost and take advantage of some deals that pop up at first part of April.
All right. Ken?
Stick with it. I think 45 days, you're in the green. Buy it now. Go a little heavier on inventory, sit back, wait and see. And then in 15, 20 days, we'll reevaluate the month. If end of the month discounts pop up, jump on them.
All right. Well, that was good and concise. I love it. And I think that wraps up our episode for this week. Justin, Ken, thank you for your continued expertise and enthusiasm. And thank you all out there listening to SBCA's podcast, Component Connection. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please like it and share it with others. Stay up to date and in the know by subscribing to Component Connection on whatever podcast platform you use most. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for listening to Component Connection, brought to you by SBCA. If there's a topic you'd like us to explore in a future episode, email us at podcast@sbcacomponents.com.